Hey everyone, welcome back here to my channel where I play Planet Zoo. My name is Nissa and today we add our first modded animal in here, and we does it in this kind of one of these habitats all the zoos have that kind of house these smaller animals that climbs. And what did I put in here? Again, it is a modded animal. I have full video on it below, check it out in the description. But here we have the Indian Giant Squirrel, and it's so cute, and we actually have a lot of them in here. But yeah, this is the habitat. So if you want to see how I built this or learn about them, because I never knew about these before, so if you want to learn about them, then please keep watching. And let's just start with a apology today, because I accidentally got it into my head that it was a ground squirrel, which is not. It is a Indian giant squirrel, not ground but giant. And I said that multiple times in my mod video this Thursday. I do apologize for that. And I also actually partially built this habitat for the idea that it was a ground squirrel, which means that I would have focused probably more on climbing than I actually did. However, I did notice in my mod video that it did climb, so I still built a lot of climbing, so I didn't feel the need to go back and change that necessarily. But with that out of the way, as you can see here, we built it on the back of our food and shopping area here, also on the back on the red pandas. It isn't the red panda habitat per se, but it's that area we are building on the back of. As you can see, I also put in a few buildings, keeper buildings, here behind the red pandas into the trees pretty much, which is a staff area, a workshop and a research center, just to put it in here where no one would actually notice it. It is quite bare at this point, but when we build out this building with more habitats, it will completely disappear, at least from the point of view of the guest. Squirrels are one of the most normal animals around the world. I think most countries have at least one species or multiple species of them just hanging around, living their best life in nature. But people probably do not think of that often is that they are rodents, just like our capybara and the rats and the mice and so on. We know this specifically because they are in the Rodentia order, being the order of rodents. But that actually doesn't say as much as you might think, since there is over 2,300 different animals in this order, meaning they have a wide variety, and some of them are of course closely related to others. To find their more close-knitted families, we look at the family called sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Sciuridae. It isn't the most well-described family we ever talked about, but it is described here as it includes small or medium-sized rodents. This includes tree squirrels, ground squirrels, including chipmunks and prairie dogs, among others, flying squirrels, and that mostly are indigenous to the Americas, Eurasia and Africa. But again, since we have the Indian Giant Squirrel also here, it clearly isn't limited to that. Going through here, we have a lot of squirrels, red squirrel that we know a lot of, eastern gray squirrel and so on. But we also have animals like the groundhog that I don't think a lot of people would see as so closely belonging with the squirrels, but they clearly do. However, I'm not gonna mention every single member of this family, since this family almost hold 300 different species and subspecies. But if we want to see their absolute more like each other animals. We are of course looking at the genus, which is the first part of the Latin name, and in this case it is Rattufa, I think it's pronounced. This genus is only 4 animals, being Rattufa indica, which is our Indian giant squirrel. Then we have Rattufa macroura, which is the grizzled giant squirrel. And then we have Rattufa bicolor, which is the black giant squirrel. And then we have Rattufa affinis, which is the cream-colored giant squirrel. And of course, we need more than just that they are giant squirrels to pull them together, and there also do exist other giant squirrels besides them. So they are specifically described as oriental giant squirrels of cat-size tree squirrels from the genus Rattufa, of course. In this subfamily Rattufinae, they are distinctive elements of the fauna of South and Southeast Asia. However, as we have for many animals, it's not enough to have an English name and a Latin name. We need a few names, and here we actually only have the 2, which is rare that we don't have a million. But we have, of course, Indian giant squirrel, but also the Malabar giant squirrel. Again, same squirrel, 2 names. We already mentioned that they are cat size, but this is not like my cat's cat size. It is smaller cats. They will weigh around 1.5 to 2 kilos, which is roughly 3.3 pounds to 4.4 pounds. So it's a small cat, but it's still a cat, and much bigger than the squirrels we have here in Denmark, for instance. And it actually also have a really special status, since it is the state animal of Maharashtra, which should be a Western Indian state. I'm sorry, I do not know the geographic over there, but I trust what the website says. In the local language here, which the local language is Marathi, it is called Shikaro, which I actually like that name much more. So I personally think we should all use local names for a lot of animals, because it makes them sound so much more exotic. I mean, Shikaro instead of Indian giant squirrel. It's just more magical that way, to be honest. Of course, in this video, I will only show you the pictures that I would normally make in a speed build. So if you want to see really close up of this mod, I have made a mod video on it, and the link will be in the description below. However, if you want to hear how they look more like in the wild, they have this color variation that they can have a few difference, but mostly they will have these different shades patterns that will vary from red to brown to black on the back and the most of the body, at the top of the head and the ears. Then they will have white patches on the belly, and the rest of the underside, the forelegs and the tip of the tail, will have this creamy color. Again, they will have a few variations, some more brown, some of more red, of course, but they still have this very narrowly limited way of looking, where we know some animals that can have vastly different patterns, colors, and all of that. But because of this uniformed colorations and patterns on them, they actually also all have the same lip and nose color, which is pink, which is actually not a lot of animals where they all have that. Furthermore, their colors will normally be a bright dark or light brown, and their tail is extremely strong and long, because again, it's a squirrel. It use the tail for a lot of stuff, especially balance, and it have this again red, darkish brown colorations going on, and then the white tip, cream to white tip, sorry. I will highly recommend, if you want to see them, that you at least Google pictures. It can be a little difficult to see them in the wild if you want to, if you are not in India, of course. But Google pictures, because they have some features that are not necessarily squirrel-like. I would say, looking at pictures, that the bare bone structure of their face is actually a little more goofy looking and just overall less elegant than what I would picture a squirrel normally. So again, if you want to, if you have the time and want to see them, I highly recommend you take a look at them, because they seem quite unique in that regard. Growing up, my mom and dad's friends actually had squirrels as pets, not giant squirrels at all, and definitely not Indian, but they were flying squirrels. And one thing I learned were that if a kid is stupid, which kids are, and get their fingers inside of the fence, then because they're rodents, and rodents are gonna nibble on things, they're gonna taste things, they're gonna put their teeth into things. So you always want to be aware that kids don't get their fingers in there. And in a private home, you can simply keep an eye on the kid, which my parents didn't. But in a zoo, you wouldn't be able to keep an eye on every single kid. So the easiest way here is to make this extra barrier, which will be long enough away so the kids can actually not reach the fence, but the parents can actually still lean over a little bit if they want to get closer and take a picture or something. I know me and my dad actually love these kinds of fences, because you can get your camera close and then you can actually take a picture in between the fence, so you can't see the fence on the picture. You don't get a glare for a window or anything like that. It's really nice. But again, respect the animals. If they seem scared, then stay away from the fence. As the Indian giant squirrel is the Indian giant squirrel, it clearly is from India. What we see with most animals carrying a country in their name is that they don't really listen to borders, and they will live quite a few places and not only in that single country. However, the Indian giant squirrel does only live in India, and only in the tropical climate zones, being forest, rainforest and montane forest, and nowhere else. So they are of course extra vulnerable because they have such a limited habitat. For good measures, the mod actually allows you to have group sizes up to 50 of these giant squirrels. I decided something smaller clearly here, but they are actually very solitary creatures. Sometimes they will live in pairs, but that would primarily be in the mating season or mom and baby. Further than that, it will not work because they just don't like too much noise and they don't like each other. They are active, what I would call like cats, which would be early morning and in the evening, and then in the midday they would take a nap and relax. But clearly they are squirrels, they are vulnerable, they are not big predators, they can't really protect themselves, so they need to hide. To do that, they have their nest, which would be like a tree hole or a nest they have built. They can even construct nests with twigs and leaves and such, but they need to be somewhere that even if they construct it, it needs to be up in trees where they are less vulnerable, and it's also need to be somewhere where they can actually hide sufficiently, and if something is after them, it should be strong enough to take the blow if something big attacks the nest. Of course, it's limited how big animals get up in the trees, but still, some animals still can climb and find squirrels delicious. But since they have a big habitat, and sometimes there's a long way to your nearest or to your nest, therefore you just build a new nest or find a new nest. So these squirrels will have somewhere in between 2 and 5 nests, depending on how big territory is, of course, and what is available for them, of course. But one of these nests will be different. It will be dedicated to nursing their young, and they will hide in there, and then mama will go out and then sleep in some of the other nests when she needs to. When you live in the trees or are so vulnerable on the ground, it is of course important to be able to move from tree to tree. In some areas it's quite easy because the forest parts that are really old will pretty much have grown into each other, and they can simply just take one step from one branch on one tree to another branch on another tree, no issues there. However, as humans, we tend to not leave them alone and let the forest grow this way for long. Therefore, it is extremely helpful that squirrels in general are extremely agile, and the Indian giant squirrel is so agile that they can actually take a jump from one tree to another and jump all the way up to 6 meters, which would be roughly 20 feet, which is so extremely impressive. 6 meters is a lot for a big animal, but this animal is so small, and the biggest part of it is its tail, and then it can jump so long. Again, I'm not sure if it's from same height to same height, or if that would be 6 meters and then kind of gliding the last 3 meters or something, so they will jump on a lower branch. Not sure about that part, but no matter what, it is bloody impressive. If you ever seen a squirrel in real life, you know that they do not always flee when you come close, and some people would falsely think that it's because they are not scared. It's not. All animals have this kind of flee or fight behavior, and for most squirrels it will be to freeze instead. They will flee eventually, but most likely it will take their brain sometimes to get there. So what they do until their brain get around to, oh, maybe I should get out of here, then they will simply freeze. Or if they are on something big and flat, like a tree trunk, they will flatten themselves and try to convince the predator that they are a part of the tree trunk. I already mentioned that they live in these specific habitats, which makes them vulnerable for things like logging and dam construction, and even when they just clear room for development and or farms being built instead of forest. Again, if that's what you need, that's what you need. They are also hunted. Again, they are much larger than most squirrels and easy for most animals to hunt, most people to hunt, because they have a small size, so they are easier to handle. So they are in that sweet spots, kind of like chickens, making them easy for a lot of people to get to as a food source. So I do understand why they are hunted. This is specifically very, very potent in cats. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, since they have a lot of urban development in those areas and people are hungry. But the thing is that rodents have this alternate way of seeing things sometimes, and a lot of animals use the politic, I need to survive, to make sure that we can survive in the future. Like, I need to survive long enough to reproduce so my offspring can live long enough to reproduce, and so on. Rodents just make sure to have enough kids, so even though 90% of them die, there will still be enough to keep their numbers strong. And Indian giant squirrels are also a part of this. So they just breed and breed and breed, and therefore they are still at least concerned animals. Even though they have these things that could make them extremely vulnerable, they just make sure to put enough new blood out in the world every single day. And that's definitely also a way of doing things. Anyway, guys, enjoy the cinematics and I will come back afterwards. Okay guys, that's all I got for you today. I really hope you enjoyed it, and as always guys, like, subscribe and turn on the bell notification so you know the next time I upload a video. I really hope to see you again, either in the comments below or in the next video. Bye guys.